I'm going to challenge something that every founder believes. You think you need to be the most talented person in your company. You think you need to be the best strategist, the best marketer, the best operator. You think talent is what separates winners from losers. You're wrong. Talent is table stakes. It gets you in the game. But what separates the founders who scale to 100 million from the founders who get stuck at 5 million is not talent. It's consistency. The founder who shows up every single day and does the work, who executes the plan even when it's boring, that founder wins. Today's guest has built 3 companies, and she's not the most talented founder I know, but she's one of the most consistent. Paisley, welcome to Scale Up Stories.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you leading with that, because I've spent most of my career getting asked, how are you so talented? And the honest answer is I'm not. I'm just consistent.
Tell us about your 3 companies and what you learned from building them.
My first company was a content marketing agency. I was decent at sales and strategy, but I was not a great marketer. I knew enough to hire good people. And then I showed up every single day for 7 years and executed. Built it to $5M. My second company was software. I was not an engineer. I was not a product person. I was probably below average on both. But I hired great people and I showed up every day and we executed. Built it to $12M. My third company, I've done the same thing. Not the most talented founder, but consistent. Built it to $25M in 6 years.
At any point, did you feel like you were the limiting factor? Like you weren't talented enough?
Constantly. I'd walk into meetings with people who were smarter than me, more experienced than me, more skilled than me, and I felt like an imposter. But I realized something. They were also quitting. They'd get bored. They'd get frustrated. They'd leave. I was still there, still showing up, still pushing. The difference wasn't talent, it was perseverance.
That's a different frame. Tell me more about that.
Most talented people are attracted to novelty. They want interesting problems. They want to work on the cutting edge. Once the problem becomes routine or the company becomes a business instead of an experiment, they get bored and they leave. I'm actually the opposite. I love routine, I love execution, I love the process. So while the talented people were getting bored and leaving, I was building systems and scaling operations. And that's where real value comes from.
Is consistency a competitive advantage, or is it just a basic requirement?
It's both. It's basic requirement. You can't succeed without it. But it's also a massive competitive advantage because so few people are actually consistent. Most people have talent and inconsistency. They're brilliant sometimes and absent other times. They have bursts of energy and then they burn out. They start things and don't finish them. Consistency is rare. And because it's rare, it's an advantage.
How does consistency compound over time?
Exponentially. Let me give you a concrete example. In my second company, we decided that every Friday, the entire team would write a summary of what they learned that week. Not what they shipped, what they learned. That's a tiny thing. 5 minutes per person. But I did it consistently. Didn't skip it. Year 1, we did it 48 times. Year 2, 52 times. By year 5, we had over 250 learning summaries. That consistent practice created a culture of reflection and learning. People internalized the idea that learning was valued. Over time, that compounded into a company that was dramatically smarter than comparable companies. Why? Because we were consistently reflecting while others were just moving forward.
That's not a talent thing. That's a discipline thing.
Completely. I don't need to be smart to do that. I just need to be consistent.
Walk me through what consistency actually looks like day to day. Because I think people abstract it into this idea of just keep showing up, but that's not what you mean.
Right. Consistency isn't about showing up and hoping things work. It's about showing up and executing the same process repeatedly with small improvements. In my first company, we had a sales process. Meet with prospect, understand their problem, propose solution, follow up, close. We did that every single day. The process stayed the same. The pitches got better. The close rate improved. But we didn't abandon the process every time we hit a bump. Most founders, when something isn't working, they change it. They pivot. They try a new approach. Consistency means you stick with the approach long enough to understand if it's the approach that's broken or your execution.
How long is long enough?
I'd say at least 10 iterations, 10 times through the cycle. Because usually it takes 3 or 4 iterations before you've even done it well enough to know if it works. Most people try something once or twice, it doesn't work, and they think it's broken, but they never got good at the execution, so they move on to something else, and they never get good at anything.
That must require a lot of discipline, especially in early stage when everything is experimental.
It does, but that's where consistency actually becomes competitive advantage. When everything is chaotic, consistency is calming. It creates structure. People feel safe. I remember at my first company, the market was crazy. Lots of uncertainty. But we had our process. Every week we did our client calls the same way. Every Friday we had the same meeting. That consistency was comforting for the team, and it was building institutional knowledge. The other thing is that once you have a repeatable process, you can measure it. You can see what's working and what's not. You can iterate intelligently instead of randomly.
Is that how you improve the process?
Yes, you run the process, you measure the outcome, you identify the biggest bottleneck. You improve that one thing, you run it again. Small improvements, consistently applied, compound into excellence. That's the difference between consistency and stagnation. Consistency plus measurement plus iteration is how you get better. Consistency without iteration is just repetition.
I want to distinguish between consistency and perfectionism. They can look similar on the surface, but I think they're very different.
You're right. They're opposites, actually. Perfectionism is about getting it right. Consistency is about doing it repeatedly. A perfectionist will spend 2 weeks crafting the perfect email campaign before sending it. A consistent person will send an email campaign, measure it, refine it, send the next one. Over a year, the consistent person has sent 52 iterations and learned constantly. The perfectionist has sent 4 perfect campaigns and learned less.
So perfectionism actually undermines consistency?
Dramatically. Because perfectionism is slow. It's paralyzing. You want everything to be right before you ship it, so you don't ship. You iterate forever. Consistency requires you to get comfortable with good enough, and then improve it through repetition.
How do you maintain that mindset when people are telling you to be excellent?
Excellence and consistency are not mutually exclusive. Excellence is the long-term outcome of consistency. You become excellent by doing something repeatedly and improving it each time. But in the moment, you have to accept that this version won't be excellent. It'll be good, and that's okay.
You mentioned compound effect earlier. Walk me through how consistency compounds.
Okay, let's say you commit to one thing. Every day, you write one insight about your business. That's 30 minutes. Year 1, 365 insights. You're learning daily. You probably don't notice it. Year 2, 730 insights. Now you're seeing patterns. You notice that 3 insights point to the same problem. You solve it. Year 3, 1,095 insights. You're now able to see trends that most people never see. You've built institutional knowledge that nobody can copy because it comes from years of consistent reflection. That compounds into a competitive advantage that's almost impossible to replicate, because the only way to get there is to do the consistent work.
But most people don't have the patience for that.
They don't. They want the results immediately, but results come from accumulated effort, not from brilliance. I've worked with brilliant founders who could never build a company, and I've worked with average founders who built massive companies. The difference wasn't talent, it was patience and consistency. The thing about compound growth is that it's invisible for a long time. In year 1, you're not seeing much difference. In year 2, you're starting to see it. By year 5, the difference is massive, but most people give up in year 1 or 2 because they can't see the progress.
How do you stay motivated when the compound growth is still invisible?
You have to trust the process. You have to believe that if you show up every day and do the work, something is happening even if you can't see it yet. That belief is what separates consistent people from inconsistent people. I tell founders, you're not building for year 1. You're building for year 3 and year 5 and year 10. If you measure success by what you see in year 1, you'll quit. If you measure success by what you build over 5 years, you'll stay.
How does consistency affect team dynamics?
It's the single biggest factor in team health. Consistent leadership creates psychological safety. People know what to expect. They know that if they commit to something, the leader will support them consistently. They know that the process won't change randomly. Inconsistent leadership creates chaos. People don't trust the process. They don't commit. They protect themselves.
Have you seen teams perform differently based on leadership consistency?
Dramatically. I had a manager who was brilliant but inconsistent. Sometimes she was fully engaged. Sometimes she was distant. The team never knew what they were getting. People were always a little bit afraid. Performance suffered. I had another manager who was less brilliant but incredibly consistent. Every week, same one-on-one with each person, same feedback framework, same process for decisions. The team trusted her completely. Performance was significantly higher.
So consistency is a form of leadership?
Maybe the most important form, because it signals that you can be trusted, that you're reliable, that you're going to be there. I've noticed that the teams that perform best are the ones where the leader shows up the same way every single day. Not emotionally erratic, not changing priorities every week. Stable, predictable. That consistency creates permission for people to do their best work.
Does consistency mean you can't evolve as a leader?
No, it means you evolve intentionally. You don't change the fundamentals. You improve how you execute the fundamentals. I've changed how I give feedback over the years. But the principle that feedback is essential and I'll give it honestly, that hasn't changed. The form has evolved. The core practice has stayed consistent.
Does consistency matter the same way at different stages of company growth?
The mechanism is the same, but it plays out differently. Early stage, consistency is about discipline and execution. You have an idea, you're executing on it repeatedly. Each iteration gets better. That compounds into a product people want. At scale, consistency is about maintaining culture and standards. You're not changing strategy every quarter. You're not reorganizing the company every time you hit a problem. You're maintaining the values and practices that got you here while adapting execution. Most companies mess this up. Early stage, founders are constantly changing direction. At scale, they're changing too much and too fast.
What does consistency look like at scale?
It looks like we have our annual planning process. We commit to a strategy. We execute on it. We review quarterly, but we don't abandon the strategy. We iterate on execution, not on direction. For Shopify, that consistency was give merchants tools to build their businesses. That didn't change. But the tools changed. The execution changed. The direction didn't.
Is there a downside to consistency? Can you be too consistent?
Absolutely. Consistency can become stubbornness. You can be consistent about the wrong thing. There's a difference between we're going to execute on this strategy and we're going to execute on this strategy no matter what the market is telling us. The first is consistency. The second is ego, and it'll destroy your company.
How do you know the difference?
You listen. You have clear feedback mechanisms. You know what your customers are saying, you know what the market is saying, and you're willing to adjust if the data contradicts your strategy. But you don't change every time someone criticizes you. You don't pivot every time something is hard. You're consistent about your direction while being flexible about your execution.
So it's consistency about direction and adaptation about tactics?
Exactly. That's where most people get confused. They think consistency means not changing anything. No, it means changing tactics constantly while maintaining strategic direction.
How do you measure if you're being consistent?
The simplest measure is, did I do what I committed to? Every week, ask yourself, what did I commit to? Did I follow through? If the answer is no more than once or twice a month, you're consistent. If it's more than that, you're inconsistent. But there are higher level measures too. Are you maintaining the standards you set? Are you following the processes you established? Are people on your team able to predict your behavior? Those are all measures of consistency.
Do you track this formally, or is it intuitive?
I track it informally. I review my commitments weekly. But the most important measure is feedback from people around me. Do they feel like I'm consistent? Do they feel like they can trust me? If the answer is yes, I'm probably consistent. If it's no, I need to look at where I'm failing.
Let's go back to your first company. You built it from $0 to $5M. Walk me through what consistency looked like year by year.
Year 1 was survival mode. We didn't have consistency because we didn't have a process. We were figuring out what worked. That year was chaotic. We tried a lot of things. But I was consistent about one thing. We shipped every week. Not beautifully, but we shipped. Year 2, we'd figured out our core offering. That's when consistency kicked in. We had a sales process, we had a delivery process, we repeated them. That's when growth started compounding.
What changed between year 1 and year 2?
We had learned enough to know what worked. Once we knew, we could systematize. Once we systematized, we could be consistent. Most founders try to be consistent about things they haven't figured out yet. That's backwards. Figure out what works first, then be consistent about it.
How long did it take to figure out what worked?
Probably 6 months. 6 months of experimenting and learning. Then we locked it in. And for the next 7 years, we were consistent about that core process while adapting everything else.
Did you ever want to change it?
Constantly. I wanted to try new things. I wanted to optimize, but I resisted because I knew that the consistency was the advantage. The moment I stopped being consistent, I'd lose momentum.
You mentioned momentum. How does consistency create momentum?
Momentum is the compounding effect of repeated action. When you do something consistently, people notice. Customers notice. Your team notices. It creates a psychological shift. In year 3 of my first company, we'd been doing the same sales process for 2 years. Customers started expecting it. Our reputation started building around it. Referrals increased. Not because we changed anything, because we stuck with it long enough for people to notice and trust it.
So consistency creates trust?
Absolutely. Trust is built through repeated positive interactions. If you're consistent, people trust you. They know what they're getting. If you're inconsistent, even if you're occasionally brilliant, people don't trust you because they don't know what they'll get next time.
How does that play out in hiring and retention?
People join companies because they trust the founder. People stay because the founder continues to be trustworthy. And trustworthiness comes from consistency. I've had employees who worked for me for 10 years. Not because I was paying the most or because the company was the most prestigious, because I was consistent. They knew what they were getting. They knew I'd be there.
Rapid fire?
Ready.
Most important consistency practice for founders?
Show up every single day and do the work. Don't take founder breaks. Don't disappear for a month.
Can you be too consistent?
Yes. If you're consistent about the wrong thing, it becomes stubbornness. Balance consistency with feedback.
Does consistency get easier over time?
Much easier. It becomes habit. The first year is hard. Year 3, it's automatic.
Biggest mistake founders make around consistency?
Thinking that they need to be brilliant instead of just showing up. They burn out trying to be genius. Consistency is unsexy. It doesn't require genius.
If you had to pick one thing to be consistent about, what would it be?
Communication. Consistent, honest communication with your team. Everything else flows from that.
Paisley, close us out. What should every founder understand about consistency?
I think the most important thing is to understand that you don't need to be the most talented person. You need to be the most disciplined person. Talent is a multiplier, but discipline is the foundation. You can build a massive company without being brilliant if you're disciplined and consistent.
How do you build that discipline?
Start small. Pick one thing. Commit to doing it every single day or every single week. Don't miss. After a month, add another thing. After a year, you have 12 consistent practices that are compounding. That's how you build a company that scales, not through brilliance, through accumulated discipline. The practices I found most valuable are daily review, weekly planning, consistent one-on-ones, monthly reflection, quarterly strategy review. None of those are novel. All of them are powerful when you do them consistently.
And the payoff?
The payoff is that after 5 years, you look back and you've built something remarkable. Not because you were the smartest person, because you showed up every single day and did the work. You can't skip this. There's no shortcut. The only path to scale is through consistent execution over years. That's the deal. The other payoff is personal. You become a different person. You become someone people trust. Someone people want to follow. Someone who gets results. That transformation happens through consistency.
And if you're the most talented person but you're not consistent,
You'll have a brief moment of success, and then you'll fade. Talent without consistency is like a firework. It's bright for a moment, and then it's gone. Consistency is how you build something that lasts. I've seen incredibly talented people flame out because they couldn't maintain consistency, and I've seen average people build empires through relentless consistency. The choice is yours.
Paisley, thank you for the reminder that consistency beats talent.
Thank you for asking. This is what I'm most passionate about because I've lived it. I'm not the smartest person in any room I walk into, but I'm one of the most consistent, and that's made all the difference.
Everyone listening, you don't need to be a genius to build a company. You need to be consistent. Show up, do the work, repeat. That's it. That's the secret. That's episode 24 of Scale Up Stories. I'm Sakil. Consistency compounds, talent doesn't. Scale Up Stories is independent. No sponsors, no performance metrics. Just founders talking about what works. If this episode changed how you think about your daily practice, share it with one founder who's chasing brilliance instead of consistency. Subscribe wherever you listen. Leave a review. Links to Paisley's work in the show notes. Until next time, show up, do the work, compound.